Good morning, church. This morning's reading is from Luke 22 verses 44 to 46. It's a little bit of a heavy read for first thing in the morning maybe, but hopefully we'll all agree that it is well worth it by the end of it. Okay, verse 44. And being in anguish, he prayed more earnestly, and his sweat was like drops of blood falling to the ground. When he rose from prayer and went back to the disciples, he found them asleep, exhausted from sorrow. Why are you sleeping? He asked them. Get up and pray so that you will not fall into temptation. You know, falling asleep at inopportune times seems to be a bit of a speciality of Christians, I think. I watched in wonderment a few years ago when a vicar who was leading a wedding of a very close friend of mine, he went and sat on his chair facing the congregation while somebody else came up to preach. And we watched as he slowly but surely fell asleep in front of the congregation. And what was the highlight of this moment was that his Bible slipped off his lap, hit the ground with a thud, which woke him up. You're going to struggle to come back from that, aren't you? Anyway, it was quite a moment. But as we see in this passage, the disciples fell asleep in a couple of moments where Jesus had asked them to be praying. You might have been there yourself, perhaps, when you found yourself asleep in a prayer meeting, or woken up perhaps by a dig in your side. But anyway, it says in the book of Matthew and in Mark that their eyes were heavy. That's why they fell asleep. Whereas Luke uses this very specific term here, that being exhausted from sorrow, they were asleep. Now, Luke doesn't actually say that Jesus told them how he was feeling. That's what's recorded in Matthew and Mark, where he said to them, "My soul is overwhelmed to the point of death." So whether Luke is thinking that perhaps they've overheard Jesus praying and that has caused them this anguish, we can't fully know, but we know that this is what Jesus was going through. And Luke tells us that they too were feeling this sorrow. I wonder today who you know who is tired, who is exhausted, whether that's just through having heavy eyes because of a heavy year, or perhaps they're in anguish for some reason or another. Perhaps you can bring some light into their life and some hope and some encouragement today through a text, through a card in the post, through a knock on the door, something to lift them today. But maybe that somebody is you. Maybe this year is just, well, it has been, of course it has. Certainly has been for me, and I know for most of us, if not all of us. It's been heavy. Well, there's encouragement to take today, whether that's just because you've got heavy eyes or because you're feeling heavy through sorrow. We see here that Jesus did not fall asleep. In fact, it says that being in anguish, Jesus prayed more earnestly. Now that's really hard to do when you're in anguish. I've been there, when it just feels like every prayer is so difficult. But I really want to encourage you today to look to Jesus, the one who didn't fall asleep when things got hard. In fact, he prayed all the more earnestly. And I want to encourage you to reach out to friends too, if that's you today as well. And hopefully they won't fall asleep on your watch, and they'll pray for you. But most of all, look to him, that you might know the help of the one who doesn't sleep, who doesn't slumber, and who will help us get through this day. Have a great day, church.